computer, and we begin the recording, and I will close this out and let me share my screen. Share the whole tin. Okay, there we are. All right, so hello and welcome. It's very cold outside today, so maybe a lot of people aren't here because of the cold. I walked outside today and I didn't freak out, but man, it was cold this morning. I was walking the dogs. It's not supposed to be like 38 degrees in Florida. Oh, we got a baby in the background coming in. We got a baby coming in the
Yeah.
background.
Oh, a little girl.
Oh, here. Clarky, come here.
We come to say night night. She was a little upset, so we're gonna go and put her down. Okay. So say night night, Daddy.
I
Good
was gonna pull up one
night.
of I was gonna pull up one of my dogs, but I don't got babies in the house anymore. I got everyone's too old. Hey Abraham, hey Brendan. So as we're in week 4. So any questions on last week's assignments? Any questions on anything to this point? Anything you saw this week that terrified you? Doing good. The number of people who had questions, they've been sending me questions on the quizzes. The quizzes are an ongoing thing. There's an interesting one from this week, last week. It had to do with getting what was it? It was like looking at the name of a person named George or a date, and you had to look at it was like less than 8 years. And when the quiz was written, the answer was Susan or Susie, but now it's George because it's now 2025 and the quiz was written in like 2021. So we're going through and making those changes. Again, if you see any problems with the quizzes, just let me know. I'll look at it, I'll explain it to you, and 90% of the time you're right, and I fix your grade. So the quizzes are a constantly evolving battle. They're not my favorite thing in the world, but I think out of the 37 students I have, about 10 of y'all take the quizzes and report back, and the rest of y'all just take the quizzes and move on to the next day and don't care. So I've already got 2 students who completed the course because they got time. It's a self-paced course. If your pace gives you that much, then go for it. Okay, if you have no questions on last week, today we're going to talk about functions in SQL. So to this point, we've talked about the select statements, we've talked about insert update statements, we've talked about the where clause and the from clause, we've talked about joins, inner joins, left joins, and right joins. And today we're going to talk about how to make the stuff coming from the queries prettier, to make it look like you want it to look, to format it, to do all sorts of things, and to use functions. A function is a predefined uh, object in SQL that forces data to look a certain way. And we're going to go through a bunch that are in your texts, and we're going to go through a bunch that aren't in your texts because I think they're fun and they're a good way to show off that doesn't break anything. Right? So the first one here is concat, which is short for concatenation. It basically takes 2 text fields and turns them into one. So here I've got last name, I've got open quotes, comma space, close quotes, first name as full name from actor. So all of it is just going to give me that. And that's a nice way to look at a name. So this is because everything in these databases is in their own column. And we want to be able to merge it so people will look at it like it's normal, right? Because if we show them people the way the data looks in the database, they're not going to understand it. So we got to make it look like they would get it. Here we've got case sensitivity. I'm selecting my email and then I'm doing lower email. And what lower does, it makes everything in lowercase. Okay. And yes, you are correct. I can do upper and do the exact opposite. Okay. Again, it helps us with formatting. It helps us making the data look when it comes out on the screen, makes it uh, more attractive for someone to look at. Okay, I got length. What length tells me is how long is the field in the column. Okay. This would be good for like passwords to make sure passwords are the proper length or something along those lines. Or you only want things of a certain length. You want to limit something. You can only have 20. You only have 15. So you can use this to check the length of something. Replace. Replace lets me move, take something that's in a text field and replace something else. So here I've got title, and if there's a space there, I'm replacing with an underbar. Yeah, Brendan.
This might sound um dumb question, but how do you get it so that you only see that second column of what you wanted to see, the length or the filter?
You remove the first word in the
Remove
select
the
statement.
first. Okay. And it'll
Yeah.
still work.
Mhm.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Yep. I'm just showing this for so you can see the difference. But yeah, so whatever's in that select queries, the select part of the query is what's going to show on the screen. Same thing as if you're week 7, week 7, week 8. I've changed the way I've taught this course. I've changed the way I teach this course. I used to just do the code that was in that week's assignment, but now I do 13 weeks of code in 8 weeks. Um, and I'm covering things I've never covered stored procedures before because it's not part of the course or the curriculum, but I'm doing that now because it's interesting and important. So a stored procedure is code that's saved in the database that you can execute by calling it. It's like a function in coding. You create a function in coding, you call it, give it the variables, push it through, and it sends out a result, right? So it's called a stored procedure in SQL. And so whatever you put in the select statement is what's going to come out of that stored procedure. So yeah, you just put the stuff there you want for that. I'm just showing this for checking. So here I've got rounding. I'm going to round the amount to the nearest dollar. Okay. Here I've got truncate. Now I told you about truncate last week. Truncate is the command that we use to delete everything in a table at one time. Just like it's like flushing. Everything's gone. However, in the case of amounts or in decimals, it removes the decimals without rounding it up. So if it was like 7.98, it just gets rid of the 0.98. So this just gets rid of any decimals that are there. So if you just want the whole number, that's what does it for you. Okay. So this one's a fun one here. It's called modulo. So it's this guy here. Now you know the percent sign as the wildcard operator um, in um, in text blocks, right? But when you talk about in numbers, what this does here, when I do customer percent 2 equals 0, this is you're dividing this number by this number, and the response is binary. It's either 1 or 0. It either has a remainder or it doesn't have a remainder. Okay. So in this case, I'm dividing the ID by 2, and if there's a remainder, it's odd. And if there's no remainder, it's even. Does that make sense? So when I run this, it tells me whether my number is odd or even. Okay. Um, I think this one's just fun. I don't have a practical application for it, but maybe you could think of one. The reason why I'm showing you all these functions today is because if you're doing this final project, as you do them, you might need to write some queries that get a little fancy. And here's some things you make your queries fancy. All right, here. Now gives me my current time, my current date and time. Current date gives me today's date. Current time gives me time as of now. So when I do date time, it's both of them, right? But if we're putting a field into the database and it's date, we don't want the time there. So we can separate the time out by using current date. And we'll show you some other ways to do it as well. Okay. So you want now gives me the current date time. Current date gives me current date. Current time gives me the current time. Here, I can format the date. And you can look this up or Google it. There's a bunch of different formats here. But here's I'm taking the rental date and I'm changing it. I'm formatting rental date to do month, day, and year. Okay, as opposed here, it's year, month, day with time. So capital M gives me the date with the name, and then D is the date and Y. But this is something, if you Google this, you can find there's a dozen different ways to format the date when you're doing it. But again, you see this makes more sense this makes more sense to show somebody than this. Over here, I can select the month out of the rental date. I can select the month name out of the rental date, the day or the year. I can separate it out. So if I just want to see what month something happened out of my rental date, I can pull all that out.
I have a question about that.
Go for it.
So the month and the day, the year, those are functions that SQL recognizes.
Yep.
Okay.
And you can tell them, so whenever the word turns blue or gray, that's a function. Now, that doesn't mean you can't use it as a column name or anything like that. You can, but these are all functions. So what this function does, the day function, it says, here's the value, pull the day out of it. Because this is the rental date here, right? That's what's there. And there's a lot of information in there. And there's hour, minute, and second as well. You can pull the hour out. So I can change that to hour. Let me add rental date here so you can see the.
I have another question,
Go
Brother
ahead.
Stivic.
Sure.
So is SQL, is it object oriented? Is
Yeah.
this it is?
Mm-hmm.
Because I noticed when you're adding a row to a table, is that kind of like creating an object?
No. No. The object, well, okay, so it depends on your perspective of things. The object you create is the table. The table is an object, the index is an object, the column is an object, the cell is an object. The data you put into it, it's not really an object. It's more like window dressing. It's what lives in there. I suppose I've never been asked that question before. That's a really good question. I suppose from a certain perspective, you could see the data as objects, but it's not really. I know that's kind of a non-specific answer, but the data really isn't an object.
Well, I'm because I was thinking about constructors, right? In
Right?
OOP,
Yeah.
and it kind of takes the form of a constructor when you're adding data into
Yeah.
a row.
Yeah. I mean, like I said, like I see where you're coming from, and you're not wrong. It's just I've never looked at it that way. I can see there's an argument that the data could be considered an object because it's something that can be taken, changed, modified, and used. So in that sense, yeah, you stumped me, man. If we were in a classroom, I'd give you a candy bar because I
Awesome.
that's a question I've never been asked before. But I guess in some perspectives, it is an object. Um, So yeah, I'll go with it's an object, but not in the traditional. You can't program with it. You can't make it do anything. But yeah, I don't know. Huh. I'm gonna do some research on that and come back next week with an answer. Is data an object? All right. Huh. You got me thinking now. But yes, Oracle is object oriented because you create objects and use them.
So another question. So
Sure.
is this the only way to write SQL by using select statements?
Well, there's select, update, insert, and deletes. But yeah,
But
those are
that's
the
like
four. Those are the four.
that's the main.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean that because that's your data manipulation language. So select, insert, update, delete, and truncate are your five commands that modify the data in the database. Then you've got your data definition languages, which is create, alter, and drop, which is what create the objects. Create table, alter table, drop table. Create database, alter database, drop database. There's also language for security. There's also language for other stuff, but the two we deal with in this class are just definition and manipulation.
Okay. Thank you.
But the queries are pretty straight. The queries all look. I mean, they all start with select, update, insert, delete, and they all have the same um by anatomy, but just how you manipulate. It's how you the different commands and functions you use that change it.
Okay. Because I'm wondering, so these functions, then you would use them in the where clauses
You can
to
use them where
filter?
I'm using them here. You can where clause to filter. You can write select star from, if I could type rental, boy oh boy, rental, where uh why'd you give me an error? That should have worked. Oh, it says when. That's why. Uh, there we are. So here's where I'm using that function in the where clause. Here I have it in the select clause. So you can use the functions anywhere. So here's another one. There's another way I can do extract the month. So here I did without the extract. Extract means obviously pull out of. So select rental ID, rental date from rental, where extract month from rental date is 5. Okay. You could just do it that way too. Here's another function, date diff. It gives you the difference between two dates. So here I'm getting the rental date and return date and the difference between the do them as days. Okay. So that's a quick function there. If you wanted to find out how old, how many days before someone's birthday or how many, whatever it is, anything with a date diff, you can do that. I can add days to a rental. I can add time to rental. So here I've got rental date. I'm adding 7 days to it. So I've added 7 days. I can change that to years and add 7 years to it. So as you see there's way, I mean, the practical application of this is, in the case of this database, you rented a video on this day. It's due back in 7 days. I can just add 7 days to it and put that in the column. I can add 7 years to it, 7 minutes to it, 7 seconds to it. Casting is a way to convert a text into a formatted data type. Text is not a formatted data type. Date is. This doesn't do anything special. It's just it explains to you what it does. If I tried to do this, this should fail. Nope, it worked. No, see? Yeah, so that did work. Never mind. It converted it. But anyway, if I try to do that, integer would break. So here, I'm converting a text field into a char 30. So again, text is a data type that lets you put as much stuff as you want into it. Okay. That is not a good thing. Let me show you this. Let me take a side road here. Okay. So here's one of my favorite topics. How is data stored on a disk? Okay. Have any of you guys ever collected trading cards or baseball cards or any type of card and you keep it in a binder with the thing with the 9 pockets in it? Okay. So in databases, there's something called pages and there's something called extents. Okay. The page is like the page of baseball cards. The extent is the notebook that it's in. Okay. A page is 8K big, and an extent can hold 8 pages, which means an extent is 64K. Okay. You with me? So here are 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Okay. And let me do this. I'm going to explain why text isn't a great thing. Okay. So here are essentially 3 extents, right? And let's say you write data to it. You save your data and your data takes up, nope, those 3 extents. And then you write some more data to it and it takes up these. And then you write some more data to it and it takes up this. And you write some more data to it and it takes up this. Okay. So this is somewhat organized, right? Every extent has data. So, and then I write some more data. So this is to one table, this is to a different table. And then I write some more table to this data table. And then I write some more to this table. So as you see, as you fill the database up, you fill the pages and the extents, the data gets saved in different pages, right, across different extents, and it's not contiguous. Like all the stuff from the red table is not in the same extent. Okay. So this is a fragmentation in databases. And you can defrag a database. And what it does is it takes puts everything together. Okay. But here's where it gets a little confusing. So I got this. And so what indexes do is they map all this stuff. So it says, hey, the index, all this stuff is in these 3 tables. The index has where the extents are, what's in them, and how it works out, right? And the indexes have to be rebuilt periodically because as you put more data in, there are more extents, there are more pages. It's got to map all that stuff out. Okay. But let's say I delete some data. I delete this and I delete this. Okay. When I next write to my table, my database, it just fills in the blanks. So all of a sudden, this big wad of data is in two extents that are far apart from each other. So think of it in terms of baseball cards, or Pokemon cards, whatever. You have all your pages, and then you trade some out. You get empty spots, and you're in a hurry, so you take your new cards and just put them where you got the old ones from. And if you do that enough times, your card binder is crazy, and you've got to take over the dining room table for 3 or 4 days to reorganize everything. Okay, so that's how your database works, right? So what happens is these can only hold 8K, right? Um, and what you don't want is the information spilling over. You don't want uh your information from one column spilling over to multiple pages, right? Because your ID will fit into one of these, your varchar 30s will fit into one of these. That's all fine. But the text field can take up like 30 pages across 5 extents or whatever it comes out to be. And what happens is your indexing becomes much harder to do because it can't get into that text block and look for things easily. Am I making sense? Is this making sense? A little bit, kind of. Okay. Um, we'll talk more about this when we get to indexes because what the text field does, it puts all the data across a massive amount of extents, and then only one index points to it. So if you try to search it, you're like, somewhere I have a Pokemon, I've got a Pikachu in this binder, but I don't know where it is. And I've got to flip through every page in the binder to find the one Pikachu because I bought 150 cards and just put everything in there without paying attention to it. That's what a text field does. Okay. Um, so back to what we're talking about here. So a text field is a giant, massive amount of data, and I want to convert it into just a char 30, which is only 30 characters. Okay, and it's a permanent translation. And all it's going to do is take the first 30 characters and let it go. Because it won't let me, I can't put it into a char without this happening, without this conversion. That was a long story to get to here, but so I run this. And so now it's just, that's all it is. Okay. Coalesce, uh, basically says if the coalesce is if it returns the null date, it uses the current date instead. So here, when I use this coalesce, if return date is null, it gives you today's date instead. Because nulls break things. There was a question on week 3's quiz that said if you have a where clause and you use the between command, the between modifier, say between this and null, it never returns right because null is a function in a database that kind of messes things up, and you really shouldn't use them unless use them in text fields. Don't use them in number fields. So here I'm getting the difference of my return date, my rental date. And if there's no return date, I'm saying use today's date instead. Okay. I don't think I have any no return dates, but that's what it would do. Here, I'm concatenating, which we've used before, and I'm using a command called lpad, which is, I'm saying left pad. So what this is doing is taking the ID dash and then taking the customer ID and padding out to four characters and putting in zeros where there'd be blank spaces. So let me just show you what that looks like. Okay. So instead of customer ID 1, it's now ID 0001. Okay. So this is just a way to format things to make it look different. So if you want to use the customer ID like as a badge ID or whatever, you can format it to look the way you want. if we have, if you got a string command that's got a bunch of spaces in the front and the end, which cause problems, you can trim it just by using the command trim. Okay. If you want to confuse people, you can reverse the text in a field. I don't know why you would do that, but you can. There's a command called absolute, which gives you the magnitude of a change, regardless of being positive or negative. So here I'm going to take amount, I'm going to subtract 10 from it, and then absolute is going to give me whether it's positive, it's going to the same result. So here, look at this. So here, 299 minus 10 is 701, but the absolute difference is 701. Okay. So absolute just gets rid of positive, positive, minus. It gives you an absolute difference, just whatever it is, regardless of the positive, negative. You got ceiling and floor. Ceiling and floor takes a amount that's a decimal. Ceiling rounds it up, and floor rounds it down. Okay. My locate command tells me the position in a string of a specific character or string of characters. So here I'm looking for the @4 sign in an email. And it's going to tell me, so if you look at a cell, each position has a number. And so if I do this, you know, the ampersand is at the 11, space 11, ampersand's at 17, 15. Okay. So if you're looking for a phrase or a character, whatever you can put in the quotes, it'll tell you what the character, what the location of it is, where it starts. Here, we talked about date diff. Now I've got timestamp diff. Here I can take timestamp diff and take two different dates and say how many days are different, how many hours are different, how many months are different, how many seconds are different. Okay. I know I'm throwing a lot of functions at you. But these are when you get into development of database queries and databases, this is what helps you get that data formatted to something that makes sense to the people that need to see it. With last day, it gives you the last day of the month that's in the date. So this is month, and the last day of the month is the 31st. This one has actually come in very handy with me in a lot of cases because I've had to write when I worked for the property insurance company, we'd have to do a lot of things where it was due on the last date of the month. So I'd have the column that had the date where it initiated, and then I could do last date and say, hey, it's due on this day. And then I've got string to date, which is the last conversion. It lets me convert a string into a date. So here's my string, and I want to convert it to look like that. Oh, no, I can't do that. I just do something else. Do it that way. I can't play with that one that way. Okay. There's probably still another 20, 30 different functions for data manipulation that are out there that we didn't cover. So just one of those things like as you go, like the first 15 of these are the ones that from your assignment, and the last 15, the last 10 are just ones that I kind of threw in there because for fun. Do you have a question, Brendan?
Yeah. Really quick. I saw the time was in 24 hours. Is there a
Yes.
way to get it to
Yes.
12-hour time for people to
Yeah.
see?
I just don't
Okay.
remember what the command is. Let me see. Let me play with it for a second. Where were we
I
here?
probably could look it up. I was just
Yeah, just look
wondering.
at there is a way. There's a way to modify. There's a way to make it look however you want it to look, but it's in 24-hour time. Just that I forget what it is to change it, but yeah, you can.
24
Casey?
hour time just makes more sense.
Well, I mean, it does, but it doesn't. I mean, depending on who you're dealing with. Um,
Yeah, but logically speaking, I'm just sitting here thinking like I'd rather look at 1700 than 7 p.m. because then if I say 1900, people are like, "Oh, okay, I know what you're talking about."
yeah.
But not everyone else agrees with my statement of military time, so
Well, it's interesting. So the topic of time is interesting. Not only for like how you present with military time, like over in the UK, most people use what we refer to as military time or as 24-hour time. But the bigger problem with doing anything time function related in a database is what time zone is the server in that recorded that time. So all of our servers, so the company I work for right now, a couple of years ago, they had this really weird way of doing things that I had to fix because it was giving everyone a headache. Um, all the servers were in California. This was about a decade ago. All the servers were in California, and some of them were set to California time. Some of them were set to um, Virginia time, but most of them were set to UTC, which is Greenwich time. So depending on the server you were on, would tell you when you saw what time it was, you'd have to go back and figure out what time it actually happened. So if there was an error in the database and it said, 3 p.m., I didn't know if that was East Coast time, West Coast time, or Greenwich Mean Time. Um, they resolved the problem by setting everything to UTC, which is Greenwich time, which I didn't want to do because it takes me a while to do the math to figure out that it's 5 ahead of where I am. And if you're in Utah, it's 7 ahead of where you are. And if you're in California, it's 8 ahead. I mean, it's just, and the only reason, honestly, the only reason why I know Greenwich time is 5 hours ahead is because I've watched Doctor Who since I was 14 years old. And it's a British show. And I know it comes when it says it came at 8 p.m. British time, I know it's 3 o'clock here. That's the only reason why I know Greenwich time because of sci-fi nerdness. But but as far as formatting the, you can format the data any way you want to look at it. It doesn't matter. Good.
Yeah, so how do you know, um, how did you figure out where that, what time zone that server was in?
So you actually have to go look into the settings of the OS
Okay. Because,
because, go ahead. No, what are you gonna say?
oh, I was saying at work, I work for some dental offices.
Mhm.
And so we're tasked with creating pulling from Dentrix Ascend, which is the
Mhm.
database we can put all our stuff,
Mhm.
making a dashboard for our ops team to see. And so if like a doctor, if we collect something at a certain time, it's in 24-hour time.
Right.
So I have to tell them what I have to change it so that the people who don't know what that is
Yeah.
know. And so I'm wondering where I don't know Dentrix sends where they grab their database from. It could be California or it could be. So I was just wondering that.
Yeah. So you have, if you're getting the data from somewhere, usually you can ask them what time zone it's in. But you can when you write the query, you can have it. Yeah, you'd have to ask them what time zone they're in. Most likely, if you find out where their company is located, that's the time zone they're in. Because most people set the servers to the time zone they're in, unless you get a weird company like mine that decided UTC was the way to go. But yeah, so you could take that time and say that their offices are in Colorado, so obviously they're Mountain Time, and I'm in Virginia, which is Eastern Time, so I add 2 hours to it to make the time. But the only way to find it is ask them where it is. But like I said, 90% of the time, it's wherever the servers live. or wherever the company lives. I can't say where the servers live anymore because they might have their servers in the cloud. And if you want to know if their servers in the cloud, just wait for AWS to go down again for 3 days, and then you'll find out that they're in the cloud because their servers don't work anymore. I had this argument at work last week because they were talking about moving the database to the cloud, and I manage the database. I'm like, no, I'm not putting the database in the cloud. I'm not putting it in the AWS because AWS goes down. My servers don't go down. And if the cloud goes down and we're still up, we're better than the other companies that are in the cloud. So no, thank you. I'll probably lose that fight, but that's okay.
Do you live in the East?
I live in Orlando.
Oh, okay. That's why
Yeah.
it's this time.
Yeah. I live in Orlando, where it's currently 36 degrees.
Oof. In Orlando?
Yep. I was telling Casey, our weather report says there's a 40% chance of snow on Sunday.
Oh my gosh. We were just in Tampa and it was really
Hmm.
nice.
Yeah, it was
Couple
80.
weeks.
It was last Monday it was 34, and then by Thursday it was 86, and then on Monday it was like 72, and now it's 34, and it's gonna be 28 on Saturday, and then by the end of next week it'll be back up to the 80s. It's all the theme park mentality. Our weather's a roller coaster. But were my family in the pool today? Yes, because I don't know why. Um, yeah. Anyway, any other questions about these functions and stuff like that? These are great fun to play with. If you got the dental office thing, you can absolutely dig into these and play with them and present the data the way they want. Just a quick Google search will say, "How do I convert from military time to regular time?" And they'll tell you how to do it. But and like I was telling people, like, you know, there are so many functions. There's no way anyone will know them all. So just Google it. How do I make this happen? How do I do this? How do I do that? And there's always there. Use AI. Say, how do I write this query to show me regular time, not military time? It'll show you. It's very fast and very easy. But formatting data is, if you're a database developer, you're a database app developer, and you're trying to get the data out of the database to give to people, these are your lifeblood. How do I convert the data to look like they think it should look? There's probably even a language translation function somewhere. So I don't know of it, but I wouldn't be surprised if there wasn't one. Um, so yeah. Any other questions? Comments, thoughts? All right.
A comment.
Sure.
It seems like these functions are more declarative. Is that the proper
Yeah.
description? Instead of telling the code, the server what to do, you just
Right.
or
So
how to do it. You tell it what to do.
yeah. So all these functions are data manipulation, which means everything's happening in RAM. It can't happen anywhere else. So yeah, they're all declarative. Do this. Yeah. You got the good questions, Abraham.
Thank you.
You're making me think. I like that.
Yeah, because I'm thinking of how to go about this. But if you start telling the machine what to do, then that could get complicated. But this simplifies a lot of the work.
Well, yeah. So
How it functions.
T-SQL is a much simpler coding language than anything else because the majority of things are already pre-programmed in there. So if you want to convert a string to a date, if you want to, all these functions are in there. So you're not telling it what to do, and it's all cosmetic because everything I did here had nothing to do with the data that was in the database. I didn't change anything on the database. It's all cosmetic changes. Could I use these commands to change it? Absolutely. I could use anything. I could update using these commands, and that's a permanent change on the database. But everything with select, it's just cosmetics. Didn't change anything on the back end. So yeah. All right. Well, I will take the transcript from today as well as the video and as well as the code, put it into the announcement. If there's nothing else, I thank you guys for your time, and I will see you next week.